This is Koeshall from the Through the Fire Training Organization at the Metal Shop here in Tyler, Texas. And today what we're going to talk about is a training methodology, how to do things with an attribute outlook rather than a technique outlook. Very often I find that people in learning a martial art, and very often it's passed on that way through instructors, people are taught an art through a technique set. Now, there's nothing wrong with this, and as you know, if you need to learn how to do a martial art, you have to know that martial arts techniques. Very, very important, I understand that. But the thing that most people miss is you are not learning the attributes that you need to make that martial art actually effective and work for you. Maybe you've heard the axiom, maybe you haven't, but it's not the person in the martial art, it's not the martial art, it's the person in the martial art that makes it good or bad. And you've all seen this. You can take somebody with a great attribute set, like a boxer, professional boxer, and you give them 5 techniques, let's say a jab, cross, hook, uppercut, and an overhand right, and they're a fearsome fighter. You can also take a person who has 600 techniques in their martial art, and if they're in horrible shape and they can't even see their feet because their belly is so big, they're not going to be able to fight no matter how many techniques they have. Now, if you're a technique collector or somebody enjoys cataloging techniques, that's fine, more power to you. I'm not trying to cut on you at all. So if you're actually trying to make your martial art functional, make it so that it can work for you in a real situation, then I suggest that you stop concentrating 100% on your techniques and start thinking about making your attributes more functional, becoming quicker, becoming faster. 2 different things. Having an explosive initiation speed, having an understanding of lines, educating your eyes, being able to see where things are coming from, being able to see openings as they happen, being able to see telegraphs in your partner, etc., etc., etc. There's many different attributes that we're going to look at in upcoming videos. But the first one I want to talk about is specifically to weapons work, and in this case, as an example, we're going to use a single stick. And many people get impressed with what I call the unimpressive. Don't get me wrong, when you see somebody whipping a stick or another kind of weapon around, or even doing an empty hand technique, it can look very impressive. The only thing I have to say about that is watch the person they're doing it to. Are they standing there in a locked out position? Are they doing what Bruce Lee called dissecting a corpse? That can look flashy, but it's not impressive. What's very impressive is someone who can flow and create spontaneously in the moment as needed for that situation that they find themselves in. And that's not as pretty, it's usually not as flashy, but it's very, very difficult to do and is the highest level of martial art and what I believe we're all searching for in a functional world. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how to look at the striking families, or how to look at stick patterns or stick work and not look at techniques, but look at family groupings of movements, and to start to see movement as just something in and of itself. Not as a technique, not as a situational thing, but a generic concept of how to move a weapon around your body with your body. When you understand that, you can create as many techniques as you want. You'll be able to look at somebody doing flashy things, and instead of trying to memorize exactly the correct way they did it, the correct way they did it, the exact way they did it, you'll be able to look at and understand the concept of what they're doing and be able to create it and adapt it for you in the position that you find yourself in. So let's get to the mat and start talking a little bit about those family groupings. Okay, we started to talk about learning how to move the weapon around your body, how to be comfortable with the weapon, rather than focusing specifically on a bunch of techniques. And again, guys, I want you to be impressed with the impressive, not the unimpressive, which tends to be more flash and not as much substance. It's important that you be able to throw the weapon around. It's important that you be able to be capable with the tool that you're using in this situation. But it's more important that you're able to use it realistically than it is that it becomes some kind of a magic wand for you that you can just float out in the air. Okay, so if I start to move my stick around and you watch me move the stick around, sometimes it might look really nice, it might look pretty poor, I'm not sure. But you don't maybe know exactly what I'm doing. If I start to break apart those motions, though, into family groupings, movements that are similar, you will very quickly be able to see exactly what I did. So, as an example, one family grouping we call the figure 8 family. This motion is a downward X or a downward figure 8, and you notice the stick basically is moving in a figure 8 with the emphasis going down in the center, or a downward X. I can also reverse that and make that an upward figure 8. And this is a little bit more of a slashing motion, so it becomes a little bit more slinky than the hacking kind of power motion of the downward 8. I can also do a horizontal and a vertical strike that becomes a diagonal 8 here. An inward horizontal and a vertical backhand. I can also reverse that and make it an inward vertical and a backhand horizontal. And these are just some examples of the figure 8 family. There's many different motions within the figure 8 family, but they have one thing in common. The tip of your stick is basically making 8s. Another example would be a Sunkiti family or a thrusting family, and I tend to break that down into 2 types of motions. A circular thrusting motion or a straight thrusting motion. So I can thrust my weapon forward, thrust it forward, thrusting in this kind of a manner, or I can thrust in a curving manner, thrusting it in this motion. 2 different ways, with the tip going through and then coming through with a butt stroke here, or just keeping my hand out and using the tip to rip and slash in this manner. Okay, so again, once you learn to break apart the motions of the particular weapon that you're trying to use or trying to learn, you can then begin to isolate those motions and perfect them. Once you've perfected them, you can start to put them all together and use them in your system. And you'll notice all of a sudden, when that motion quality gets better, when your movement quality gets better, your whole technique series will start to be better, crisper, more dynamic, because the base ingredients of that technique are better and more high quality. Okay, so now we've given you some examples on how to move the weapon, and you start to see how that these groupings fit together. There's many more examples we could give you, but in the context of this, I'm not going to be able to give you all of what I teach. You'll have to come out and see that for yourself. But the important point is here not to be impressed with the unimpressive. Isolate attributes, or isolate in this case a way of moving a weapon. Train it, make it really good, and then when you apply it back into a technique, it will be much better. The other thing I want you to consider is, if you are trying to learn a martial art, if you have to use that martial art time to get yourself in shape, are you able to actually learn what you're trying to learn in the martial art? If you're exhausted and you're trying to get your body in shape, no, you're not going to be able to concentrate 100% of your energy into learning what you're being taught in the martial art, because a lot of your energy is going to be just going to getting in shape. So in the same way, if you are learning a technique and it's a whole list of movements in this technique, are each one of those movements going to be crisp and good and sharp? Eventually, yes, they could be. But they could be much better, much quicker, if each individual pieces were already good before you combined them. And it's often said in the martial arts that advanced techniques are no more than the basics done well.